IMRU presents Unzipped with Cary Harrison, exploring the complexity of human desire, where intimacy means insight, uncovering the truth about sex and relationships, delving into the science of seduction, your sex, your stories, and everything in between. This is Unzipped with Cary Harrison.
Welcome to this third edition. This is a special show that actually explores all of the amazing things that are generally unspeakable. The good news is, given the, let's just say I don't even know how to politely say it, the political climate in which we live, in which you have to be so careful, I'm just going to have to be so damn elegant in my language to involve you. And I would ask you to please do the same. In other words, let's just speak in code, shall we? And we're going to open up the phones later. Why? So that you can jump in on some of these topics, since Los Angeles is the media capital of Earth and the previous production capital of naked people doing the hokey pokey. Yep, all born here. Now you can go anywhere and shoot the same kind of stuff. But it has had an effect over decades. And I'm going to be speaking, like I said, in elegant code so that this topic can be fully discussed without bots and algorithms clobbering the podcast version. So we're going to use the word kornography with a K, and we're going to talk about Seggs, S-E-G-G-S. That's the new language that everybody uses online. You can always get a full version of this by going to caryharrison.com and getting our free newsletter. That's CaryHarrison, caryharrison.com, getting our free newsletter where we're going to be able to offer transcripts, perspective, and pithy commentary. That's pithy, P-I-T-H-Y. Sometimes it might be the other way. Stuff we simply can't do on the radio during these times. So welcome to another installment of Unzipped, where we're going to take a long, unflinching stare at the grand carnival of human folly. Tonight, we venture into a realm both omnipresent and yet curiously unspoken, a domain of furtive clicks and guilty glances, a multi-billion-dollar empire of flickering flesh and relentless indulgence. Yep, we're going to talk about kornography, a modern Mount Olympus of vice and vigor. The top four temples of digital lechery boast now a staggering 2.3 billion visits a month in our land of musky mayhem. Yes, musky as in double meaning there. According to a recent article in Vice, which is still an awesome and still existing, we're so lucky to have Vice, aren't we? They used to have a channel on HBO, maybe they still do, but one of the few places where you get the real down and dirty of what's going on. They've done an expose story, and the arithmetic of lust, the math equation of lust, is equally stupefying. In just 10 minutes, a man may browse 9 pages, partake in untold sinful reveries, and contribute his humble tribute, if the statistics hold, enough of which could fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool every 3 days. Now, that's not one guy. That's everybody in the United States over a 3-day period would fill an Olympic swimming pool with their tribute, so to speak. Now, the question is this a symphony of pleasure or a dirge of cultural decline? Here's our question. What does it mean to be living in the Golden Age of Smut? What does it portend for civilization, for relationships, the opportunity to even have a relationship, for the very architecture of the human mind? We now have something called PIED, which is Korn-induced erectile dysfunction. I'm not going to say it with a P because you can't anymore with all the algorithms and the bots. And we are live streaming on YouTube right now. You can go to Cary Harrison YouTube. Just Google it, Cary Harrison YouTube. You'll see us also on Instagram. You'll see us on Twitter X, formerly known as whatever the hell it was formerly known as. You'll see us everywhere, but we have to be careful about that. So we speak in analogous terms, let's just say. Can you have a relationship if you have PIED? And it's now real. You watch enough of this stuff, and we're going to get into it, that you no longer, the real thing isn't good enough, right? Our species, once beholden to coy pinups, World War II, we've all seen movies of, the doll pinned up next to the airplane, or maybe painted on the nose of the bomber. That was it, though. Rumpled magazines beneath mattresses. Ask your father, ask your grandfather. Well, it now carries within its pocket a harem that is unbounded. It is available now, streaming digitally at a moment's notice, all in dazzling high definition. So is this progress, or is it peril for all of us? And we're not here for moral scolding ever, nor for libertine cheerleading. We're here to interrogate, to prod, to plunge our hands deep into the folds of this ever-expanding colossus and see what truths might be found within. So consider with us many of these pressing inquiries as I bring out our vibrant co-hostess, the goddess Renee. Renee, so thrilled as always to have you here on Unzipped.
Thank you so much for having me. And this topic is one, I assure you, is very near and dear to my heart. I am so excited and enthusiastic to discuss this.
And, there's pretty much nobody who can really honestly claim they don't look at porn. I don't mean I've seen it in the past. I saw a Playboy when I was 15. It was my father's in his dresser drawer. All true, by the way. He kept his on a shelf in his dressing closet where he kept his suits. And, when you're the son, you figure this stuff out, because when you're going through your hormonal eruption, I don't know, where everything is in the house and you want to know. So, but today, every male does look at it. They may not admit it, but they do. And it has become a syndrome. And as a woman, I don't think you guys ogle it the same way. Am I right in saying you generally don't ogle it the same way?
It's very different on the average. And we always have to say there are outliers and there are always exceptions. But generally, women do experience Seggs and Korn in different ways than males do. And one of the things that's going on right now is there is a movement within the industry, the film industry, and also erotica industries, which have to do with, novels and other ways that people experience these art forms, where there are being women-led, women-owned, women cast, things like that. And they are markedly different than the traditional outlets and platforms and plot lines. So women do typically, on the average, appreciate more emotional background, emotional connection. Women tend to appreciate more aesthetic value. And they want to know more of the relationship behind the activity. Whereas in general, male viewers are more compelled by visual stimuli that in the moment just looks really good and also looks really different. So one of the things that's also very different in the ways that men and women experience these art forms and also relationships and activities in relationships is that women over time can actually get closer to and more excited by their male partner, whereas male partners, not just in humanity, but also in different mammals and even in rats, a lot of times there's something called the Coolidge effect. And the Coolidge effect means that, and basically that men need things to be different in order to stay enthralled. So the reason it's called the Coolidge effect, by the way, is from President Calvin Coolidge. The story is
well known for, no, seriously.
What did you say?
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I mean, what a footnote in history Calvin Coolidge was.
Well,
that's why this is fascinating.
Well, from now on, you're going to think of him every time you see a chicken, because the story goes that he and his wife, Mrs. Coolidge, were visiting a chicken farm and they got separated while there. And Mrs. Coolidge saw that there was one rooster and just going at it, being very excited by every one of the chickens, one after another, the hens. And he was very active. And she said to the chicken farm owner, "You tell my husband to come and check out that rooster. You know, he should have some of this rooster's energy." And as the story goes, the president came over and watched that rooster go down the line, hen after hen, and then said, "Will you tell Mrs. Coolidge that there's more than one hen?" And so the Coolidge effect is, and it has been documented, which is that males tend to need difference. So where does Korn with a K fit in with this? Well, it fits in because one of the things that the industry has really capitalized on is the male need to see things that are different. And now you can have this Seggs on demand. You can have differences in visual stimuli on demand. You can just go one after another, like that rooster in the hen house, and continually stay engaged. Women actually become more engaged the more familiar they tend to be with their partner, the more they find out about them and feel safe and secure with them. And that can happen with familiarity. So it's almost in the opposite direction. Although if you guys want to Google Coolidge effect, you'll find out that they are just starting to do studies on females in all the different species and how they may or may not be affected by the Coolidge effect. There's some evidence that some females have similar needs. But where does this come in with Korn? It comes in with Korn because you have a male narrative for many, many decades being on display. And so that really does explain why right now you do tend to have more male viewers of kornography than females, because it was created for the male brain. It's like they just want to see lots of different things really quickly. They don't really care a lot about background or familiarity or the emotional stuff. And then, of course, I just have to mention the biological differences, which are ingrained in our primal instinct, which is just that clearly a Seggs experience for a female is going to be have a different risk factor than for a man. I mean, a different sense of risk factors, meaning they can become pregnant, their life can be changed, there can be violence, and they could become the victim of that violence in a way that, again, typically men don't have to deal with on every single date. Women are always.
Jump in for a second, Renee.
Yes.
Just to give a nod to the radio side of things versus the podcast side of things. People are driving and come and go, and I have to constantly reintroduce because nobody knows who anybody is, given the way that radio listens. And I'm saying that on behalf of the listener, not on the behalf of me or Renee, but just acknowledging that you don't know who the hell you're listening to unless I say Cary Harrison here. And this is Unzipped here on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles. Also a variety of different FM stations, a lot of music stations that are happy to run this stuff because we're actually talking about the stuff that is forbidden, what you do when nobody's looking. And most people don't want to acknowledge that they actually do anything. They may have questions as though they're a anthropologist wondering about it. But the fact is, this has become a real problem for many Americans. And the goddess Renee, who's in another state, I'm down in Florida at the moment. She's up north. Where are you, Renee, right now?
I'm in upstate New York in the beautiful Finger Lakes region, which is usually beautiful, but now blizzard out for many, many weeks.
And of course, our studio is in Los Angeles. So we're everywhere thanks to awesome technology. And we're really looking at kornography and Seggs and some of the neuroscientific and psychological concerns. So there's a guy named Gary Wilson who's done research that suggests that corn consumption, you'll notice I'm using corn with a K. I'm doing that on purpose because right now, as we stream on YouTube, they've already limited all kinds of access because I failed and used the P version of Korn. And, boom, the bots grabbed it already. And so we're not trying to limit, we're trying to expand the access given the political climate in which we live. Anyway, this guy, Gary Wilson's research says that consumption of this stuff actually rewires the brain. It creates an addiction-like pattern. Teens are being exposed to extreme corn content before they even have real life experiences. So what happens is the teacher is the Korn, and they go on and they do it with a live human, and it's mechanical and it's clumsy. And the fact is, women don't like, yeah, I know you want it. Yeah, you do. No, they don't want that. Or I want to put it in your eyelashes. Yeah, I know you want it. It's humiliating and a sort of act of psychological violence to reenact what you see on Korn with a live woman. It's just that who's the big customer here? It's men. Back when you used to purchase the stuff, and men like to feel they're in charge. Men like to feel they're handsome. Men like to think they're Thor. So this stuff was built around the male ego, not really around the female, because she wasn't purchasing this stuff and getting it in a brown paper bag and watching it on the down low. So it's gotten so ubiquitous now that it's watched so much that the statistics that I shared earlier are kind of mind-numbing, that if you add up the quantity of issue over the course of 3 days, you could fill several Olympic-sized swimming pools. And that's just what we know about. People willing to admit it. Then there's all the people unwilling to admit it. And maybe we'll get into incels and stuff, Renee, in a minute. Let's skirt a couple of thoughts here. We are going to open up the phones because I want to hear what you think. Maybe we all enjoy it. What isn't there to enjoy about it? Let's just face it. Because unlike the Korn of the old days with Ron Jeremy and whoever these characters were, that were these hairy monkey apes, but they had giant probosces. And so it's not that a man wants to see that, but he wants to pretend he's Ron Jeremy, right? That's the point. And you couldn't pick your star. Today you pick and you go to a movie because it stars Ryan Gosling. And so you want to see him 80 feet tall for 2.5 hours. But back then the Korn was limited edition. It was whoever the guy could pull that stuff off. Now, when you're watching Korn, you can have exactly what your heart desires. You can have the most perfect A++, absolute thing that you've always fantasized about over and over again. When you meet a live human, they may not come up to that standard. And so guess what? You're seeing people that are young with erectile dysfunction because they're not getting their fantasy version met. And as a woman, and you just point out, Renee, you guys are really different. You're more content and emotional driven. But this makes it even harder, I think, for romance, because if romance is taught to you not by your parents, and of course you're not allowed to do Seggs in school anymore, even the most basic stuff. I mean, you can't even mention the stork. So there is no competent teacher except for Korn. And how can you even imagine you're going to have a relationship if that's been your training since you grew up always having the internet? And there it is. What a crummy teacher.
Exactly. And you just tapped into some of the main concerns that people are having with Korn, because Korn and Seggs are actually they're not the same thing. But people who are introduced to Seggs via Korn are getting mixed messages, and they are learning how to do it in a way that actually can be extremely worrisome, can even be criminal. For example, they have found that kornography over the years has become increasingly more and more violent, more and more tapping into fantasies of non-consensual activity, meaning that it's usually the man who is running the show, like you said, is dominant, he's in control, and doing things that back in the day were not even really showcased in regular Korn films. But more and more we're seeing that sort of trajectory of Korn showing to men that this is acceptable. This might even be what the woman wants. She is telling you no, but she really means yes. And she really likes it when you're really rough with her. And again, there can be outlier things. Individuals are very different relationships have different agreements. But the fact that we are seeing literally at this point a majority of content leading down that path means that when young people, and many of them, many boys are being exposed to this at age, 13, 12, 11, right around puberty, their introduction to girls, their introduction to relationships and sex being so markedly different than what a healthy relationship, a consensual relationship built on equality and safety and trust, so different than what that reality should be. It means that from the very beginning, you're already getting it wrong. And of course, physically, medically, and what you talked about, ED, we are seeing young men just around the world globally having ED and relying on ED medications, prescription medications at earlier and earlier ages because they have been desensitized. And this is really worrisome. If you're 22 years old and you are having dysfunction medically that early, that is extremely worrisome, in addition to the fact that now you're having trouble keeping an actual real relationship, because not only are you physically desensitized, not only are you medically compromised, but you are treating the girls that you are engaged with like somebody that you saw in a kornography film. And that is just not how reality works.
No, it is not. And we're going to open up the phones because this is so interesting. And every one of us has had a perspective, but we've never had a place to go talk about it. It's not admitted, but it is the most money-making industry really on the internet. Look at GoDaddy, where a lot of us have our URLs, our domains, our websites are hosted there. GoDaddy was a kornography site. That's it. And they made so much money that they realized they could start selling the internet, start selling websites, start selling services, and most people don't have any idea. But think about the name, GoDaddy. Yeah. So this is just the hors d'oeuvre. Now we're living in the entree. It is a ubiquitous problem. Is it a peril? Is it a promise? Is it cool? Yeah, it's definitely cool. Has it gotten in your way? Do you know people for whom it has gotten in their way? We're going to open up the lines. Your Harrison hotlines are 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. If you're streaming online and you don't have a phone and can't figure out how to do that, you can go to kpfk.net, kpfk.net, and you'll get a link directly into our streamer. And you can jump on that way at kpfk.net. Once again, 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735 here on Unzipped. Taking calls next on kornography, and then we're going to get into gooning. It's a brand new syndrome.
IMRU presents Unzipped with Cary Harrison. Your sex, your stories, and everything in between.
Looking to earn more money online? Well, meet Kartra, that's Kartra, the ultimate all-in-one business platform that makes it easier than ever to boost your income. With Kartra, creators, coaches, and experts can turn their knowledge and services into profits. You can create pages and funnels that attract customers, build memberships that share your knowledge, automate your business to free up your time, and so much more. Kartra has every tool you need to grow your business in one place. And the best part? It's super affordable and easy to use. Are you ready to streamline and scale? Well, head on over to rethinkingheroes.com/money for a free 30-day trial. That's rethinkingheroes.com/money for a free 30-day trial. Are you juggling multiple tools to run your online business? Well, thankfully, there's a better way, and it's called Kartra. Kartra. With Kartra, boosting your income has never been easier. That's because it's the ultimate all-in-one platform for online success, offering every tool you need to grow. Imagine building pages, funnels, courses, autoresponders, and checkouts all in one place for one affordable price. And the best part about Kartra is that you can automate anything. So it's like having a team of experts working around the clock to help you earn more. Ready to streamline and scale? Well, visit rethinkingheroes.com/money for a free 30-day trial. That's rethinkingheroes.com/money for a free 30-day trial. Sign up for our newsletter where we don't have to speak in code. Not yet, anyway. And we can give you the full Monty on everything that we know. Quite literally be able to publish also and post all of this research that you're going to want to know about, stuff that we don't have time to really get out on the radio, but make clear what we're talking about because it's fascinating research. You can go to CaryHarrison.com, CaryHarrison, CaryHarrison.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. We'll make sure you get everything. Plus, with the latest takeover of the FCC, who knows how long any of this legacy media will exist. And I mean that really seriously. It was just reported yesterday on NPR that they think they're going to be toast. And of course, it was in the New York Times. That includes PBS. So we want to stay connected with you just in case down the road. So make sure you sign up for a newsletter, a new newsletter. Talking right now with the great goddess Renee, Cary Harrison with you. This is Unzipped. And we've opened up the phones at 818-985-KPFK, 818-985-5735. And we're talking about Korn. And is Korn affecting your life? And do you know people whose lives have been affected by it negatively or positively? Let's take a look, Renee, at gooning or gooners, we've really birthed a new species of recluse. This is different from the incel. The incel does nothing. They can't get it up. They can't get it down. They can't get it. It is a no action, nothing. But this is a special kind of recluse. It's called a gooner. And it is a creature of flickering screens, lost in an endless purgatory of self-gratification that can go on days and days. And we now have the first reported death of somebody gooning. So you can imagine the old studies done in the 1950s where they put probes in the brains of monkeys and they would press a button and the monkey would have an orgasm. And so they put food on one side, they put this and that. And what does the monkey pick every time? Well, obviously that. Repeat. So they realized that the drive to human Seggs overwhelms everything else, including food. Well, now we have Goonies who realize they can have this unlimited meal, and we now have one that has died. I don't know if he had a heart attack, stopped eating. I mean, hard to say, but it's quite real. I mean, did we ever think in our lifetime this could happen, Renee?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about Goonies, and I'm fascinated. I have so many questions right now. They are different than incels, correct?
Let me describe this for you. So it's a subculture. This is a response to the psychological effects that you were talking about. It takes the Coolidge effect and puts it on steroids. Gooners engage in marathon masturbation sessions, sections of sessions. Enabled by unlimited online corn. Some extreme cases have led now to mental health issues, social withdrawal. We all understand that now. Even suicides. Because imagine if you can't get it. And think of the real world consequences, which include public incidents linked to compulsive corn habits, where you feel that all women walking on the street are yours and you're entitled to have them just as Korn has told you. And maybe you're a wobble bottom and missing teeth, and maybe women wouldn't ordinarily be attracted to you, but you've been taught by Korn year after year that you're hot, that you are a god, that you are Thor, and that she is yours. And so you have this privilege that you think is entitled to you to take what you want. This presents kind of a new scary for women who I think you guys are becoming aware because Tinder in its evolution realized that really it has to be built around the protecting women now, that you can swipe men away and they can never find you again.
Yes. And this is something I really wanted to say tonight because again and again, I am meeting men that are still unaware. They still have yet to get the memo that women are terrified of men. And there's been so many campaigns on social media ever since social media started, such as the hashtag Yes All Men movement several years ago, where women are trying to get across to men that we are very scared. When a woman goes on a date, whether it's over an app or she meets somebody at a bar, she's terrified. And it's sort of that old joke where, the worst thing that a man is afraid of is a woman will laugh at him, but women are afraid a man will eliminate them. And of course, that's something that's a very real fear. And when you're looking at the violence that's in the pornography that's out there today, and you're seeing it, a lot of women are beholding these art forms, or whatever you want to call them, with kind of terror. And a lot of women have PTSD from actual trauma that they have endured in the past. And it's almost like watching your own trauma being glorified on the screen. And then imagine being that type of woman, and then you go out on a date with a man, and that's his template for how to treat you. So your trauma in your life, your worst fear, what you may have already been subjected to, now your date, your candidate for partnership is relying on that as his script for how to treat women. So it's very scary, of course. And so what I keep trying to say is that men and women really do need to be having these conversations. We've seen again and again in the news, rich and wealthy, famous men who have been accused of different sorts of crimes, like Seggs crimes. And what's going on is a lot of the men will come out and they'll say, well, what are you talking about? It was consensual. Sometimes they're telling the truth. Sometimes they're just protecting their own buns. But at the end of the day, a lot of men are engaging in activities and literally are not reading the cues. And women are often too scared to give those cues because of what could be at stake. A lot of women will not know how to extricate themselves in a dating situation that they want to exit from because they're actually intimidated. And a lot of men don't know this. So getting that information out and trying to have men be more aware of how intimidated women can be, I think that's like a step forward here. And so in the movie industry, trying to get filmmakers to back off from so much of the violence and so much of the male dominated plot lines and character dynamics is really a step forward. And again, like I said, there are many film companies coming out that are women-led, women writers, and supporting those. If it's really important to you to watch pornography and that's something that you want to continue to do, keep in mind that a certain percentage of the quote unquote actors in those films are trafficked and you can't know the difference. So that's why if you can go that extra mile to research, okay, what are the companies that are trying to work with more ethical porn, non-trafficked pornography? That's one positive step that we can go towards if you don't want to eliminate pornography from your life.
Yes, it's it's a delicate balance, isn't it? And unfortunately, It's not like having one chocolate chip cookie. Most people watch it and then they end at the finish line, which does fill 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools every couple of days. We know that as a fact. Renee, you and I are talking a little bit about gooning, and it makes sense. Let's rewind for a second. Let's take straight men and gay men, and there is a gigantic difference. Sure, it might just be a mechanical difference of who you choose to do your thing in, but experientially, it's a chasm. So the average straight guy might have in his whole life maybe a dozen women. I'm saying the average. I'm not saying, now I know there's a guy listening, I've had, 50. I'm not talking about you. The average may have 12. That's it. 5 in college, some dates here and there, gets married, whatever. The average gay guy could have literally hundreds and hundreds because men are wired to say yes, but women are not wired to say yes because of all the things you pointed out, Renee. You can get pregnant. You can get raped. You can get clobbered. You can get disappeared. You can get trafficked. And other men generally don't have that worry. So they can just go ahead and do it. So it really is a big difference. And when it comes to Korn, I think the same outcome happens, is that everyone is trained by the same crappy teacher that's looking to market something along the way. Renee, let's talk a little bit about the moral. And notice how formal we suddenly are. Like when you and I talk about this off the air, it's down and dirty and randy. It's not that we're using F-bombs or particularly colorful metaphors, but there's just something about being in public talking about this. And this is my puritanical heritage speaking. This is me with this long, weird hangover of shame, where even talking about this, I just I walk a tightrope because it just feels embarrassing. And that's our culture. Yet the people at the top of this country that are now running it are felons and rapists and sex addicts and just so wildly out of control. But the rest of us really do strive to be better people, despite all of this. It's a bizarre conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And some of it too is that we're trying to make sure, like you said, that we're using symbolic language, or we're couching our language to make sure that depending on who's listening, that the people who need to get the message get it, and those who don't need to get it won't get it. So some of it is speaking in coded language too that makes us hold back. But you're right, the puritanical. Now remember, America, and as you mentioned, LA used to be the kornography capital of the world. I know the state of California certainly is. And a lot of that is related to the repression that America has had. So when you repress the natural, now I'm not talking about kornography, I'm talking about your natural biological need for intimacy and expressions of sex and relationship activity. Whenever you repress that and you make people feel shame for something they can't possibly obliterate, you are going to come out with reactions that are not always healthy. And I'm not a psychologist, so I can't weigh in, but we're all used to what happens when you repress a natural biological urge that is very healthy. And that's why I wanted to make the differentiation between what kornography is, or what it has evolved to be currently, and what Seggs, natural Seggs, is. In the same way that you wouldn't want to go to McDonald's every day and just subsist off of their French fries. It is the same way, and that could really have some medical issues for you if you did that every single day for years and years. We're not saying that food is bad, right? So we're not saying that Seggs, actually good, healthy Seggs that works for you and for who you are as a person and that makes you feel better, you can have as much of that as you want. But kornography, the way that it's being implemented right now, that's why you're seeing these dysfunctions, ED, you're seeing depression, suicide, like you mentioned. That's very true. There is a connection between suicide and people who have pornography addictions. And a lot of this is related to things like dopamine in the brain, where you're desensitizing yourself to healthy and real sex that you should be having. So we're not telling people not to have sex, but what we're saying is be aware if you're one of the people who is being triggered in an addictive way by kornography, to the point where you're talking about these goons or goonies, or you're suffering depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and it's negatively impacting real sex, then that's where the issue is. The same way that if you were just eating candy all day and you were neglecting to eat your vegetables, so that's the angle here. I just want to make that really clear, that sex is a good, healthy thing. But what we're talking about is certain addictions that can be used with this technology and with societal issues that are going on here.
Yeah, it's faux sex. That's the problem.
Right.
It's not real. You don't actually improve. You're not James Bond improving being a lover because you get to have multiple real live partners who indicate to you and feedback, you're doing great. That sucks. Don't do that. I like this. I hate that. Is that you're being trained by Ron Jeremy or somebody else who's handed, $1,000 for an afternoon to come in and do this, do that, use a chain, use a whip, use a whatever. That live real humans generally, unless they live in Berlin, they're just not into it. Cary Harrison with you. This is Unzipped. You can get our newsletter at caryharrison.com, where we'll provide all this data that we have, like reams and reams of data that's going to fascinate you about what people now know about Korn and kornography and Seggs. because it will update you on everything you wanted to know about it, because finally the research is in. This stuff is being studied. And interestingly enough, governments, states, 16 different states now have declared corn-related public health crises. But it doesn't end there. States like Texas are requiring cigarette-style warnings on corn sites, claiming addiction risks. And in the state of Florida, you simply cannot get on a corn site. Nope, cannot get on a corn site unless you tick a bunch of boxes and register. Now, it's for the children. They just want to make sure that you're over 17. But do you believe that? No, don't believe that. It has nothing to do with are you 17 or not. It's so that you can end up in a state database of being a potential, you know what? Yeah, a Seggs offender potential. So really it's a way to formally have you admit that you've done something, thought crime or virtual Seggs crime, and then you're in a database. So beware that there's a lot of workarounds that sound like they're trying to help you. Nobody's trying to help anybody. That's the whole point of this thing. It's virtual. If you really want to have an experience, go on a live date with a live human and fall and get up and, figure it out. But that part's hard too, because what person can even have a conversation over a dinner table anymore? It's too frightening. Everything is frightening. So we'll get into like some solutions and workarounds because it is such a conundrum. I want to remind you, by the way, that we're using code words here because the algorithms and the bots, as we are live streaming on YouTube, live streaming on Instagram, live streaming everywhere else, they have already clobbered us for using the actual real word. So we're using Korn and Seggs, Seggs, and we all know what that means. And it's the way we're getting around this and the way we're able to discuss this in these modern times. I remember doing radio in the 1990s where you could pretty much do and say everything and people were really straightforward and we just didn't have these complex problems. But here we are, besieged by AI, besieged by bait and switch, besieged by propaganda like we've never seen before. And these simple human experiences are now anathema to our condition. And we have entire generations literally trained by people getting paid to do performance art. And that's what people think is real. And then people are too afraid to meet up. In Japan, we have entire segments of the population that will not touch each other. Boys and girls will not touch each other. And therefore, I think boys and boys probably don't touch each other too, because they're all in the same world. Okay?
Here's an important message from the US Med Diabetes Solution Center. If you have diabetes, you know the pain of pricking your fingers. But now, by wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce your pain right away. It's easy to use and helps you make more accurate diabetes treatment decisions. So call us right now to see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no cost. US Med. Better service. Better care.
There is now AI-generated deepfake porn and immersive VR experiences that are creating new concern. So everyone would be like, gee, I wish they had it in 3D. Well, they do. Some are worried now that continuous exposure could push users toward more extreme content. So we've all met people that need, cattle prods and all of this other stuff to up the game. So when you become hardened by experience, you gotta up the game to make it more interesting. This is why we have PIED, a corn-induced erectile dysfunction, and you have to keep upping the game. So at some point, you're not going to be able to find a partner that's willing to be with you. Do you see this also? I mean, women have to be aware that men on a first date want to do really extreme behaviors.
Yeah, and particularly the youngest generations who are aware that this is what's going on and that there's been this sort of evolution in the pornography world and on social media. When what I'm saying again is reminding people just about the power dynamics, violence, and things that really the older generations didn't grow up with being so ubiquitous. And I'm not going to mention some of the acts here, but a lot of young people are really certain and keep talking about how there's extreme acts of violence being normalized in this kornography. So when a young woman, or well, any woman, if she's going out on a date or if she's meeting somebody in person, that level of primal instinctive fear that I mentioned that women go through on a daily basis, just when we're going to our car, just when we're coming, going through the parking lot, all of these things that are running through the female brain have been amplified. And that's not really the society I thought we were working towards. And you mentioned the people in power in America right now being so antithetical to a world of safety and equality and feminism and even just human rights. And I want to say this, I'm so glad that you keep talking about the PIED, because a lot of the men who think that this type of behavior being glorified on film and on social media against women, I think that there might be this attitude that this makes them really masculine or powerful, or it's taking the power back from women. And the PIED and all of this research talking about mental health problems, anxiety, depression, loneliness, that men who are engaging in those activities, usually by themselves or even with other men, like platonic men who they're watching these things with, I'm not sure that that's beneficial to them. So in other words, if you're a man saying, well, I want to really be very virile and I want to, well, PIED, how does that work into your idea of virility? How does that work into your idea of power? Because the more that you're engaging in this, the more isolated you're becoming, the less that women want anything to do with you, and the more that you are not able to actually feel sated. You are not being satisfied. And again, just to use that analogy that a lot of experts use, if I sit here and I eat candy all day, eventually I will realize not only am I malnourished and having all kinds of medical issues, but I didn't even accomplish what I set out to do. I set out to eat a lot because I enjoy the taste of food. And now I'm just sick to my stomach, vomiting. I hate it.
Yes, but you will have bigger boobs.
But I will have, and that's really all that matters. Thank you for that. I do want to say this because I know we're getting up towards the end of the hour, and you just reminded me of something I desperately wanted to mention here, which is more research. Like you said, the research is in and is going to continue to come in. And one of the big concerns with kornography for men and women, and I want to make it clear, this isn't just to help women. If you're somebody out there and you're a man, you don't care about women for whatever reason, this also affects you, men and women who are exposed to more and more of the current kornography that's out there, have more and more body issues. They have self-loathing issues, and they tend to seek out surgical options for body modifications more than somebody who does not have a korn addiction or hasn't been exposed to as much kornography. This is men and women suddenly thinking that they are not good looking, thinking that they are not up to spec, and that they have to go and do something about it and injure themselves. So even eating disorders can be linked into this. So that doesn't seem like a really healthy world. Even if you're somebody who is saying, oh, I want to be more and more masculine. Okay, well, if you want to be more and more masculine, how does hating your body, not being able to perform, not being able to have actual sex at all or relationships, how does that make you feel? So I think that everybody wins when we try to come together and seek healthy, actual, like you said, like real sex. That would be a great option. And then you would actually feel good about yourself and have a better, and it's different for everyone. I want to make that clear. Everybody has to make up their mind of what's healthy for them.
Cary Harrison with you. This is Unzipped. You can go to caryharrison.com, sign up for our free newsletter. We're going to include all of the research that we have. It's probably a 10-minute read, but it's fascinating what they have discovered about this. And we're touching on some of the finer points here, and also offering some thoughts on how to make life easier and, how to navigate the world of romance, dating, Seggs, and korn, which everyone is going to consume. But if it has consumed you, you might be too embarrassed to talk about it. You might not even know it. And you might feel that you've got this proxy for a live human. You've got it all figured out. So you're good. You don't need to have the real thing anymore because you've got this. But then when you meet the real thing, for some reason, it's not responding as it would in a fake version on Korn. And so you get angry with that real thing because it's not responding like it should, because you've seen millions and millions of hours of the fake version that tells you this is how women really are. But guess what? They're not, because this stuff is not produced for women. It's produced for men, for egos, to inflate us, to make us feel good, to make us strong, to make us feel handsome and hot, to make us feel viable, to make us feel wanted, that somehow she's craving us secretly. And that's what the Korn does. It makes you think they're craving you personally, secretly, that all along in their mind's eye, they've been fantasizing about you, not the guy next to you, not the guy on the train, not the guy in the bus, not the guy on the TV or in the movie theater, but you personally. And then you find out that she's not. And who's to blame? Well, you can't really blame your own behavior or your own choices, or all the hours you've spent wasted on that. But there's something deficient or wrong or broken about her. So maybe you want to take it out on her. And women are onto this. They listen, they're smart. They are smart and intuitive. They know stuff. And they have thousands of years of this experience, by the way. After every war, after every skirmish, after every argument, they know that they're vulnerable as hell. So they've got one eyeball roaming. And we'll finish up as we're kind of coming to the end here. Renee, and thank you for being like transparent about this. And I'm also like standing at the end of the high dive here. But isn't the most amazing thing really is making out? Really. The rest of it's great, but good making out, there is nothing hotter.
That's a great point. I'm glad you said that, because that dovetails immediately with what I wanted to say, which is that, first of all, I want to say this to heterosexual men. If you are looking for a woman, for a Seggs partner, a romantic partner, who is going to be just like Cary described, that you see in kornography, totally crazy about you, obsessed with you, wanting to do everything with you. She's focused on you. She can't think of anything else. And she's totally Seggs wild. Trust me, a woman who feels safe and a woman who feels respected becomes extremely uninhibited and wild. But what happens when she feels intimidated is she will close, she will batten down the hatches, and she will not want to explore. She will not want to do any of that because she's terrified. So it really works in everyone's best interest if you are investing emotionally, if you're being transparent and vulnerable and talking to her and making that emotional connection. What you're doing is you're investing in satisfaction for both of you. It actually enhances that. And that's something that kornography hasn't taught. And so kornography has really, a lot of it has been lying to men about what makes a woman create. Look, women love Seggs just as much as men. And to pretend that we don't is not a good thing to do. Women need to be fulfilled sexually just as much as men. And the way to get both of men and women on the same page is exactly what we're talking about here. And Cary's talking about making out, that exploration, that sort of tentative getting to know you physically, and what do you like? All of that, you're not going to see that in a lot of kornography. But that's what actually opens these doors of exploration and innovation. And you will feel very, very excited. That is much more interesting than just sitting around with your guy buddies, scrolling through the social media kornography stuff. You know what I mean? And then you'll feel really good. Trust me, you'll forget all about kornography if you have a relationship like that.
You know, it's interesting, Renee. My ex is a twin. His twin brother is straight. He's not. Guess which one is my ex? I know. You got to think about it. It's a math problem. And his straight brother has PIED, Korn-induced erectile dysfunction. It's like, I said, is this real? I mean, seriously? And I was thinking, how much would you have to do to literally not be able to function anymore? Like it's mind numbing, but it's not that much because the pool of candidates of women that are single and available and ready to go is tiny. You know, women are coupled, women are this or that. Who knows? And, you know, in the universe of men, there's thousands of single men ready to go at any moment in every bar, everywhere. But women, it's a small pool. So for him to have his ideal fantasy woman, and then the real pool of women is smaller and maybe don't reflect that, it's a different kind of shock and awe. All that to say, we're down to the last minute, I think. Hey, Wendell, how much time do we have left, please? I want to make sure that we go out on time here. I want to thank you, Renee. Thank you so much for jumping in like this with me. And you're here what do we do this? Every couple of weeks now?
Yeah, every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Unzipped. And thank you for talking about this. Awkward and cool all at the same time. Get our newsletter. We're going to publish all of the research and data. We touched on it today, but there's like so much to know. And if you're worried about this, or if you have friends who maybe participate a little too much and seem to be having these problems, you're going to want to know about it because it also helps you manage this thing a whole lot better. You can go to CaryHarrison.com, CaryHarrison.com, CaryHarrison. Get our free newsletter. We're going to publish all of this stuff and make sure you get it all. This has been Unzipped. Renee Yawarski, the goddess Renee. Thank you so much. I love and worship on bended knee, brilliant, intelligent women. That to me is hot. And we'll talk another time about sapiosexuality, because that's where your brain gets fired up as much as the rest of you. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you all next time.
IMRU presents Unzipped with Cary Harrison, exploring the complexity of human desire and everything in between.